Oh, you thought I left. You thought that I was done doing DFS for the year. I skipped last week, but no, I'm not gone. I'm not saying sayonara. There are no buys here. There are just winning lineups over here on the DFS, the Big Tilt. We're here to build some lineups. And of course, I'm your host, Chase Vernon. You guys can find me over there on Twitter at @FF_intervention. And I am joined by the one, the only, Dario. What's going on, Dario? How you doing, man?
What's up, Chase, man? It's great to see you. It's another week flying by. I mean, week 13 now is kind of insane to think about. But this is the last of the major bye weeks that we're going to have to deal with. So kind of happy to be done with that. And I mean, pretty soon it's going to be fantasy playoffs for everyone, So that's always exciting as well.
Dude, I love fantasy playoffs when we come to like the different slates that we can build through DraftKings and through FanDuel, and just having that limited exposure to individuals and a concentrated, I guess, exposure to certain teams. I'm excited. It almost feels like this is a little bit of a warm up for DFS playoffs because we do have 6 teams on bye, and those 6 teams, they're no joke, man. And we were talking about some serious firepower, especially at the running back position, which makes it super interesting for DFS. I'm excited to kind of break it down and talk about it. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, it's a really interesting slate. I mean, you think about the Bills are on bye, so no Josh Allen, no Lamar Jackson with the Ravens on bye. I mean, the Giants have been pretty gross lately, but Saquon's always up there among the running backs. So yeah, it's a lot of pieces to consider.
Yeah, I mean, meanwhile, we had the Cowboys already played, so Tony Pollard's off. Obviously, Kenneth Walker was hurt, but the Seahawks as well. Green Bay Packers with Aaron Jones, the Joe Mixon. Like, hey, guess what? I found a way to talk about Joe Mixon on week 13, even though he's on a Monday night game. Oh, my God. And sorry, if you don't know, I can't stand Joe Mixon in DFS. He had one phenomenal week last season, and it feels like everybody has to run him out every single week. And I'm just so happy that I don't have to hear about it this week because he is on a Monday night game. Meanwhile, we do have Travis Etienne and Isaiah Pacheco out too. So it's exciting, man. I'm excited to build some of these lineups and to really get into it. Sorry, are you ready to kick this episode off?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Let's go. Oh, man, here we go. If you are a new listener to the show, if you have not heard this show before, what we do is we break down our studs and our stacks, the guys we want to have in a majority of our lineups, or at least build our lineups around. Then we're going to build a lineup. We're actually going to build a lineup so you can take that lineup and you can use it on your own. You can go plug it in over there on the DFS Optimizer if you'd like to, on PlayerProfiler, and get the most out of this show. That's how you do it. That's how you get the most out of this show, is you take the skeleton that we give you and then you plug it into the DFS Optimizer. And then we're going to go through, we're going to talk about some guys we don't want anywhere close to our lineups. A la Joe Mixon comment earlier that he normally belongs in that section for me. He's not going to be there this week because he's on the Monday night game. And then, of course, we have our sleepers. After we build our second lineup, we dive into our sleepers and we figure out, some of those dart throws or some of those, low ownership type plays that we really want to get our hands on and give a couple shots to. Some guys that might even make your lineups work in some cases. So Dario, let's just do a little bit about this. Let's talk about somewhere that you're at right now and a team that you want to run out and you want to stack pretty heavy this week because you're over there, you're traveling, you're in Florida right now. Let's hear a little bit about those Dolphins. Who do we want to play for the Miami Dolphins? Because it just seems like Tua and Tyreek are going to break things this week.
Yeah, I think you're going to want to play all the Dolphins. I mean, sounds like Achane will play. He's full practice today for the first time since his knee injury back in, I think it was week 5 or 6. So he should be back and hopefully completely back to his usual workload. And then you've also got, I think, Jaylen Waddle. Like, I know he's been hit or miss this season. He's had a couple of nice games in the last month. And this secondary is just so beatable. I mean, we've seen DJ Moore do it. We've seen AJ Brown do it. And Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are both uber talented receivers who can just have themselves career days against this Washington secondary.
Yeah, I mean, the bigger aspect to this for me personally is the fact that, I mean, they can't get any pressure. Washington, since trading away Montez Sweat and Chase Young, can't get any pressure on the quarterback. And Tua is nasty when he's not under pressure. I mean, he has the most touchdowns with a clean pocket, right? He's a top 5 passer overall with a clean pocket. I mean, he's going to be firing them off. And Jaylen Waddle probably won't have much ownership just because of what we've seen, this year so far. He can't seem to make it work, but he can make it work up against Washington. I mean, they're even going to be losing their first-round rookie over there, although he's been more of a hindrance. But where he comes into play is by going up against some of these quicker wide receivers, some of these fast wide receivers, and he's not completely just trounced by size because he only weighs 160 pounds. He could hang, well, maybe not hang, but he might be able to hinder Tyreek Hill a little bit. He won't even be part of the game, I don't think. So regardless, even if he was or if he's not, I'm loving Tua this week. I think that he's going to see a decent amount of ownership. I don't think it's going to be insane levels of chalk because there are higher-end quarterbacks. If there's going to be ownership on Jalen Hurts, there's going to be ownership on C.J. Stroud. There's going to be ownership on Herbert to an extent, and even Kyler Murray. So I think that the guys around him will see enough ownership to keep him away from being like 15, 20% owned. So I'm cool running out Tua this week. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. Now,
yeah,
when it comes go ahead.
I'll just piggyback on that real quick. I mean, if you go to his player page on PlayerProfiler, like he's number 4 in clean pocket accuracy, and he's number 3 in passer rating versus man. We know that Washington is a man-heavy defense. That's why they've gotten burned so bad by these uber talented receivers, and it's just all lining up perfectly for Tua's accuracy as well as the talent that Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle bring to the table.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm very, very excited for this one. And honestly, I'm going to love building lineups to figure out exactly which route we want to go with this. We're about to dive into that. But running it backwise, I'm loving some Curtis Samuel this week. I mean, the Dolphins, ever since Jalen Ramsey came back, I don't want to play Terry McLaurin. I'll talk about that in a little bit. I would like to play some Curtis Samuel. I think that they're going to be playing from behind. They're going to be chasing points. So we're going to talk about some Antonio Gibson love as well. I'm good on Logan Thomas. I don't need to get him in there, but I think that as low price options with Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson are somewhat fun plays to run that stack back. Now, Dario, if you want to cover on that anymore, you're more than welcome to. We get a little bit caught up sometimes, so I'd like to invite you to move on to another stack that you might want to hit. Yeah,
I mean, another stack that I was surprised to see the ownership, or at least projected ownership, coming in as low as it currently is right now is stacking Brock Purdy with Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. I mean, the Philadelphia defense has been very much a pass funnel. Receivers are scoring points against the Eagles. And a lot of times that's been because they're playing from behind. The Eagles are actually underdogs in this game. It's, I think, maybe 45.5 is the over-under last time I checked. So it's not, I mean, in this year's scoring environment, that's actually a pretty decent total compared to some of the other games on this slate. It's going to be one of the better ones to bet on. And I think that, I mean, this is going to be a big moment for Brock Purdy and Ayuk. And if you told me that the 49ers offense was going to get shut down in this game, I would be surprised. I think Purdy is going to produce, and I think I want to sprinkle some darts on Kittle and Deebo and Ayuk, and I think Ayuk is the top priority.
Yeah, Ayuk for me is actually the guy that I want to play. And I'm not a huge Ayuk fan, but for DFS this week, it just seems like you can't go wrong. Now, I do know the Eagles get beat over the middle a lot, so I wouldn't mind sprinkling some George Kittle in there. I think he's one of the only decent tight end options, on this slate, especially with like Travis Kelce being out, Hawkinson being out. So Kittle could have a massive advantage where Kittle has the upside where you just can't. You can't catch up with that. Like, you can't play. No other player on the slate has the potential that George Kittle has. So I think that he should be at least thought about and sprinkled into your lineups. But in terms of locks, I love the Brock Purdy lineup with Ayuk. I don't mind adding in Deebo Samuel into that. I think that Christian McCaffrey being the only expensive running back on the slate allows you to be contrarian. I think that's actually a great play, especially when you start running out like the Tank Dell type lineups where you're paying down for wide receivers. But yeah, Brock Purdy for me is a slam dunk, and I don't hate Jalen Hurts. I would play Jalen Hurts with a one-off in hopes that he gets a couple goal line touches because I really don't think that DeAndre Swift is going to do much. And DeAndre Swift's ownership is actually surprisingly a little bit excessive for me. So, with that being said, I do like that call. I'm more on the Brock Purdy side, but I do not mind Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, now, I mean, the same way you talked about Kittle having kind of an unparalleled ceiling. I mean, Jalen Hurts probably has a much higher ceiling than some of the other quarterbacks on this slate. So I think I'm with you there. Although this is probably the toughest defense he's faced this year so far.
Yeah. Oh, I think easily. Well, people will argue and say the Cowboys, of course, but I'm interested now. There is a guy that's coming in. I've never seen an ownership on a player this high before, ever. Do you know who? Do you want to take a guess on who it is?
Oh, I have a pretty good feeling that it's going to be Mr. Zack Moss over on the Indianapolis Colts.
Dude, I'm seeing projections go all the way up to like 65% right now. I mean, he's at 55% the last time I checked for PlayerProfiler and a couple other sites that I use. But I mean, like, if you fade Zack Moss and he puts up, let's just say 8 points, he gets, 80 yards rushing or something like that, subpar day, you're pretty much eliminating 50% of the field in tournaments. Like, I've never seen, or at least I can't remember seeing ownership on one player this high before. It's absolutely absurd, especially considering there's not very many expensive running backs on the slate. I mean, you're already paying down at running back in most cases, and you're not paying all the way down to 4,600 like he's priced, but you're paying 5,500, 6K, somewhere in that range. For me, I want to find reasons to fade Zack Moss, and it's tough, right? It's tough because the last time they faced off, he had like an insane week. He had like 120 something rushing yards. I think he had a touchdown or two. It was crazy. But like, it's the Titans, and the Titans have actually been throughout this year really good up against running backs. I mean, am I crazy to not want to play Zack Moss this week?
Yeah, I mean, the Titans are always a tough matchup for running backs. And I remember when Moss had that big week in week 5, we had seen several successive weeks of running back chalk against the Titans that completely busted. I remember there was a big Jerome Ford week. Maybe that was like week 3. But there's just been the Titans. That's their identity, man. They're going to stop the run and they're going to be beatable on the pass. So I'm with you there. I'm probably looking, if I have a portfolio of lineups, maybe have 20% exposure to Zack Moss. Like, definitely can't afford to be absolutely zero on a guy who's in a spot like this, who's this affordable and going to get the targets. And, the thing about the Colts, I think that makes them so exciting for fantasy this year that I haven't seen talked about enough is their pace of play is always going to be high. They're going to be aggressive on fourth downs. They're going to have long drives. And Gardner Minshew has kept the offense afloat. So I think Zack Moss, I'm with you there. I think the ownership is going to go a little crazy, and we can come in well below that and still get our healthy exposure.
All right, let's go ahead and let's build our first lineup. Dario, you ready to do that? You ready to
do it?
Jump in. So I'm doing a 100K single entry lineup, and we are building around, what do we say? We want to do Tua to kick this first lineup off. We're going to be let's lineups total.
Yeah, let's start with Tua. I mean, I think the Dolphins stacks are just mandatory this week. There's looking like maybe some weather considerations coming through the DC area on Sunday, but I mean, you're playing Tua and Tyreek no matter what.
This is something, it could break it. Like, we could completely shatter DFS this week. I mean, don't forget, Tyreek Hill is going for the record of 2,000 receiving yards. Like, he's going to hit that. And this is a week where he's like, oh man, I might have some issues some other weeks. Let's go ahead and put up 300 receiving yards this week alone. Let's go ahead and do that. And Tua throws for 500, and it just goes absolutely like apeshit. So I want to have higher exposure to Tyreek Hill than I do Zack Moss, to be honest with you.
You what?
I want to have higher ownership to Tyreek Hill.
Than Zack Moss. Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah, I like that take.
So who do we want to play him with, right? We could play him with Achane. We could play him with Raheem Mostert. We could play him with Waddle. I kind of prefer Waddle in this situation. I know that Jamin Davis has been somewhat susceptible to running backs in the receiving game. So we might see some man coverage on that and Achane break a big one. So I don't hate Achane. I said Achane again. I don't hate Achane. I just want to to probably get the most out of this lineup that I possibly can. I think that comes with Waddle.
I'm with you there. I think the double stack with Waddle, I mean, we want to play our cards such that Tua has a career day. Both these guys are probably going to hit. I'm with you on that. And then, I mean, we got to get at least one run back in there. I know you said Curtis Samuel's a consideration, Antonio Gibson. Logan Thomas is probably picking up a little more ownership than we would like to see.
Yeah.
I like the Gibson play.
Honestly, I think we can run with both, right? These are two guys that are going to be, both Gibson and Curtis Samuel are going to be very reliant on the receptions to boost their points, right? And Curtis Samuel has seen, a fair amount of targets over the past several weeks. I mean, last week he had 12. He had a little bit of downer up against the Giants just because of the turnovers, which, by the way, Dario and I were at that game together. We were holding hands, sitting on the third row in the end zone, and it was absolutely horrendous watching Sam Howell and the rest of the Washington offense completely falter up against the Giants. But Curtis Samuel has seen 6 targets, 4 targets, 8 targets, and, of course, 12 in 4 of the past 5 weeks. Last week, he broke that 100-yard barrier. It put him up to 22 fantasy points. Now, earlier in the season, he had a lot better stint from weeks 4 through week 6 in terms of giving us fantasy viable weeks. He hasn't done that in the stint where he saw the targets, but at least he's still somewhat involved with the offense. He was also dealing with some injuries as well throughout that process. So I like Curtis Samuel. I think that I want to try to avoid Terry McLaurin, as I brought up, just because of Jalen Ramsey. And Washington is going to have to pass somewhere. Sam Howell is going to have to distribute the ball to some places. And I think that Curtis Samuel is most likely going to be the option this week.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, he's $500 more affordable than Jahan Dotson, who he's also, he out-targeted him last week. So I think that's a very sound play for those reasons as well. You mentioned doing both Samuel and Gibson. Like, how often do you like to do that? Kind of get the double run back in there.
So I do it from time to time in scenarios where there might not be as many high-scoring games. And if this game ends up being high-scoring, we're probably looking at 60-plus points in this game, with Miami putting up 40 of them and then Washington only putting up 20. But still, I mean, we don't need Antonio Gibson or Curtis Samuel to score because they're going to get the receptions necessary to get there. Meanwhile, Antonio Gibson should see some time in the 2-minute warning, inside the 2-minute warnings, to be able to rack up some additional receptions in that area. I'm looking at a situation where, hey, I'm only paying $4,500 for a running back. We already paid up at the 2 wide receiver spots out of the 3 that we have. We paid up at quarterback. We need to save some money somewhere. Why not go with Antonio Gibson, at that point?
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, so where do we want to go after this? Do we have a running back that we absolutely love for this game? I mean, Alvin Kamara could see 15 freaking targets. I'm not even exaggerating. Like, Alvin Kamara is one of my big locks on the week.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ramondre Stevenson could also see double-digit targets, and he's just $2,200 cheaper this week. I mean, we saw today Demario Douglas is ruled out, so they're going to have nobody to throw to. They're probably going to use more 12 personnel, so I think that Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki are probably going to see more looks than they've been seeing lately. But, I mean, Ramondre's been on a hot streak. He's only $6K. I think that he's a nice fit for this lineup.
I love it, man. I'm so on board with this. I love this take. I mean, he has 5? He's averaging over 5 targets a game over the last 6 weeks. He has 2 touchdowns in the past 3 games. Like you said, he's on a hot streak. I love it, man. I think it's a great play at 6K, and we have about 4K left per spot. Right now, we're looking at Tua Tagovailoa, Antonio Gibson, Ramondre Stevenson, Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, Curtis Samuel. I threw in the Panthers defense as a placeholder. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to come up off of that being the placeholder just because of our limited salary that we already have remaining. So we have a tight end and a flex position that we need to fill in. Juwan Johnson makes some sense here. Just going to throw that out to you. Like you brought up Hunter Henry. We're getting really hyper-focused on games, so we decided to go with two Patriots players. That might not be too fruitful.
Yeah, that's probably ugly. I do think Cade Otton's also kind of an intriguing kind of down the board tight end this week. The Bucks are favored at home. He's had a good connection with Baker Mayfield. He's getting a pretty decent target share. Chris Godwin hasn't been playing as well as we expect lately. So I think that Cade Otton at 3,200 is kind of also viable in that tier of tight ends.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Cade Otton is absolutely a play. However, we do have the Panthers defense, and all the Panthers defense doesn't really affect Cade Otton. Like it's not that much of a opposite correlation. Sorry, my dog's going crazy right now. I think that I might want to pivot over to a different game because I'm assuming that the Panthers Tampa Bay game is going to be very low scoring.
That's a good call. Yeah, we'll save Cade for another lineup.
Yeah, I think that I'd like to go with a Juwan Johnson play for this price range, or even Chig Okonkwo is kind of interesting. Do you have a take on Chig Okonkwo?
Chig's been getting good target share lately. I think the biggest thing is the Titans offense is just very condensed. It's going to stay very run heavy. I mean, we saw Will Levis obviously make a huge splash in his debut, but they haven't just haven't been able to muster up much. I like Chig at this price, I think, compared to some of the other options around here, but I'm with you on Juwan Johnson. I think he's going to continue seeing looks from Derek Carr. I mean, he had 7 targets last week, and this is another game where we expect the Saints to be trailing. So I like the Juwan play for sure.
Let's sneak some Juwan Johnson there. Just see how it feels, see how it works a little bit, see if it's all warm and feels good inside. So let's go ahead and let's do that. And then we need a flex guy. Do you have a guy that you have for the flex right around the early or the low 4K range?
The low 4K range. Let me see what we got. I mean, I really like Josh Downs this week, but he's 5,100, so we're gonna have to dig just a little bit further down the barrel. I think
we can run double tight end. I also I don't want to give away my sleeper right now. It's too early to give away the sleeper that I really would like to talk about. Let me go ahead and scroll down so that people can see. We're looking at like a Tajay Spears type play, which I think is very interesting, especially for those that think that Zack Moss will go off. If Zack Moss was actually in this lineup, I would probably be more interested in playing some Tajay Spears. Meanwhile, we have some Jamal Williams because I don't really like that. Chase Edmonds might have a spot that he could fit. Really, this low 4K range is ugly. It is not pretty.
I've got a name that I like at 3,700 as I dig through here. It's our boy Greg Dortch.
Ooh, he's been getting targeted.
He's been getting looks. He's had the touchdown last week. It was pretty ridiculous. He pulled out the celebration while they were down about 25 points. But Greg Dortch, I mean, he's whatever it is in Arizona. Once Kyler Murray came back, they've been letting Greg Dortch cook just a little bit more. And Trey McBride sounds like legit questionable whether or not he'll play. I think
Dortch, it came out and said that he was likely to play.
Oh, I haven't seen that yet.
It just came out when I was walking my dog right before the show. It said that he's likely to play or probable. I do like the Greg Dortch take, though. I think it's interesting. I think that he's been able to create mismatches, and Pittsburgh, they've got a solid defense, but they do have a weakness in terms of their secondary corner, which Greg Dortch doesn't typically line up in the slot every time. I know he plays a good amount in the slot, but not all the time. I think Greg Dortch is fun. I'm down to put Greg Dortch in.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at the names in that price range, he's probably the one I feel best about saying might get 6, 7, 8 targets. I mean, that game could be pretty low scoring. I think that might be the lowest total on the slate. But if the Cardinals fall behind, which they've been doing a lot of recently, I think he's going to get a lot of gimme targets down the stretch of the game. So I think he's a sneaky play for us at that price point.
So that means that we can upgrade at the defensive position. And we have the Indy defense, which I think could be, fun up against Tennessee if we think that might be a little bit lower scoring. Cleveland, who's been dominant, up against the Rams. San Francisco, I believe there's something going on with Lane Johnson, right, where he's having some issues.
Yeah, it sounds like he's not going to play from what I last saw.
And Chase Young can get pressure, on Philly. He's familiar with that offensive line. Which defense would you like to go with here? I normally don't talk defenses on here, but we got a few we can pick from.
Yeah, I kind of think the Saints have just really struggled to do anything in terms of scoring touchdowns lately. Derek Carr hasn't had too much trouble with turnovers this year, so maybe that's slightly a point in against the Lions defense, but I think the Lions are in a good spot. They're favored. It's in a dome. I think that things could get kind of out of hand for the Saints, and they could end up having a couple turnovers. I think that's kind of, I don't know. Does that sound like a crazy take there?
No, I like it.
Bunch?
I'm entering this lineup in. We're good. We're gold. We're going. We're going. That lineup is entered in. I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's go ahead and let's talk about some of these guys that we don't want anywhere close to our lineups, Dario. Who's a guy that you don't want to touch this week? Who do you think might see too much ownership, or you just don't understand the pricing for him? Where are you going?
For me, that's George Pickens. I hate to say it. George Pickens is such a fun player to watch. He makes probably every other week, he makes the most exciting play of that entire NFL Sunday. Yeah, but he's projected for about 15% ownership. He's only $200 cheaper than Deontay Johnson. And he's pretty much disappeared ever since Deontay Johnson's full return. The first game that Deontay Johnson was back, Pickens had a big game. Deontay Johnson was running about, I think, 70% of routes in that one. And then ever since then, when Deontay Johnson's been kind of fully in the fold, it's just been 5 targets at most for Pickens. And I don't think he scored double-digit fantasy points. We know that the Cardinals are an offense that you want to target, but we also saw Pat Freiermuth come back last week, and Matt Canada has been fired, as we know. That was, a big narrative of Week 12. So I think that it just seems like a guy that I don't necessarily get the appeal. At $4,800, sure, that's a good price for any wide receiver with his upside that we've seen, but 15% ownership. Deontay Johnson only 5,000. Another week with Pat Freiermuth back. I think we're still getting our kind of bearings on this new look Steelers offense, and I just don't feel like I'm going to be playing anywhere near that much George Pickens.
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat to you this week as with Terry McLaurin up against Jalen Ramsey, but for different reasons. Essentially, Jalen Ramsey is bodying every wide receiver that even looks in his direction. Right. He's just been great since coming back from an injury and, playing at a Pro Bowl level. We know that Sam Howell turns the ball over, especially when he tries to force balls. And so they might keep him in reads that avoid Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin could be the biggest decoy of Week 13.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want him anywhere close to that.
The Dolphins, they're number 10 in EPA per play on the season. But if you look at just since Jalen Ramsey came back, which I believe was Week 8, I want to say, 7 or 8. Since Week 8, they're number 1 in defensive EPA per play.
Yeah, it's insane.
Jalen Ramsey has been an absolute difference maker, and they're on another level as a defense right now.
I think we're going to see a lot of dink and dunk plays from Washington this week, which is why I like Gibson and why I like Curtis Samuel both so much. I think that we can easily see them both eclipse 10 targets. Just from the type of defense that the Miami Dolphins play. So, yeah, I'm against Terry McLaurin. Another team that I really don't want to touch is the Lions. And I know that sounds weird because we expect it to be, somewhat of a one-sided game. But there's just so many different players now for the Lions to go to. When we talk about Sam Laporta, we talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown. They've involved Khalif Raymond in the offense recently. Jameson Williams is coming on strong. I actually do kind of like Jameson Williams this week, but every player outside of Jameson Williams and Khalif Raymond are expensive. Like, I don't want to have to pay up to some of these premium plays and then just hope that they're the ones that see the, the folks' targets and those opportunities. And when it comes to the running back position, we're seeing an even split with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And it's like, it's just, there's nobody essentially that is putting up significant numbers up against the Saints in terms of the rushing game outside of a couple weeks. I just don't want to pay up for that opportunity. So
yeah, I mean, we saw Bijan Robinson gash the Saints just last week.
Yeah, and I think the week before that was the other big opportunity. But honestly, outside of that,
I think because of that, I would be a little more inclined to sprinkle some Jahmyr Gibbs. Ever since David Montgomery has come back from injury, they haven't really gone back to the split that we saw early on, where Montgomery had a lion's share of the carries and still was getting some targets, and then Jahmyr Gibbs was just barely getting any carries. It's been very much a continued Jahmyr Gibbs show with some David Montgomery as a nice little side dish. So I think that Jahmyr Gibbs is very exciting to me in a game where we expect them to play from ahead. But again, you could play Jahmyr Gibbs and then David Montgomery could get multiple goal line touchdowns. That's the pros and cons of this very efficient, very multifaceted Lions offense. So I can see where you're coming from on maybe being like a little tepid on playing any of them in particular.
Yeah, I don't want to sit there and try to base my lineups around certain lines built. I will have, a couple players sprinkled in from this game, but in terms of trying to build around this game, I'm trying to avoid that. All right, let's go ahead. Let's build another lineup. You ready for this? You ready to build another one?
Oh yeah, let's do it.
All right. Let's do it with the 200K fair catch single entry. Let me go ahead and pull this up for everybody and get this off. All right. We have this, and honestly, man, like the best way to go about this, right, is by knowing which players you don't want to play, knowing which players you do, and then building around that. And honestly, there's no other better way to do it than the DFS optimizer that we have on PlayerProfiler.com. I mean, I do about 150 entries a week, and I swear probably 98% of them are built by the DFS optimizer over there on the site. In fact, I think the Podfather himself has something to tell you all about that.
DFS getting harder every year, but we're here to make it easier with the DFS Dominator, because I know a lot of optimizers keep coming out. Oh, our optimizer. What about this optimizer? But that optimizer. Well, we have a cash game optimizer that leverages the projections from Dario, Billy, the award-winning projections at playerprofiler.com, and builds the best lineups for cash games that have both upside and stability, because that's what you want. It's a couple clicks, boom, boom, boom. You get the best possible lineup for your cash games. But for tournaments, traditional optimizers don't work. That's why we have a Lineup Genius, which takes you through the process of building lineups the way they should be built. Which quarterbacks do you want to be overweight on? Then building stacks, then setting run backs, then optimizing, and generating up to 150 lineups that you can easily import into DraftKings, into FanDuel. That's the DFS Dominator. It's only $45 a year. Not a week. A year. Just go to Player Profiler, click on the DFS Dominator from the menu, and you won't be sorry.
Hey, he mentioned some guy. That said he puts together,
Is that does the projections? That sounds like I might have heard of that guy.
Yeah, I think he lives out of Advantage, travels across the world, like in his van. It's pretty cool. That's Dario for y'all folks. He puts together a lot of the projections throughout the week. The guy that's on the show with us tonight, of course. Let's go check him out over there at Dario Offstein on Twitter. All right, we got to build a lineup. Let's go ahead. Let's pivot down to a different quarterback. We talked about Brock Purdy earlier in the show. Brock Purdy is who we have to go with. And there's one wide receiver that I love more than the other when it comes to Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk. And for me, that's Brandon Ayuk over there on the outside up against Philly. I just feel like this is a Brandon Ayuk game. And I know they're going to be focused a lot on him, but they can only I guess, put so many resources to try and defend against him. I love Brandon Ayuk this week. I think that Brandon Ayuk is a great play. You said that you also like Debo. Would you rather play Debo or Ayuk, and tell me why? As to which
I think I like Ayuk better in a vacuum. I mean, if you're depending on how the rest of this lineup comes together, and I think it's $1,000 difference between the two of them this week, maybe. Yeah, Ayuk is 7,200, Samuel is 6,200. I think that could make Debo the better value depending on how the lineup is coming together. I don't know if I'm very inclined to double stack them, because I think with this offense, you're going to get almost every single week is a McCaffrey week, and then it's one of the other three guys, whether that's Ayuk or Debo or Kittle. I think it's pretty rare that we see a huge Purdy game with a huge Ayuk and Debo or Ayuk and Kittle game. So I think that let's pick Ayuk and then see maybe how the rest of this comes together. We can always pivot down to save the 1,000 if we need to.
Well, in terms of running it back, we got to figure out who we want to run it back with as well. I mean, we're looking at A.J. Brown being 8,800, which is insanely expensive, especially when you consider, I think, Devonta Smith, who has been having somewhat of a reemergence in 3 of the past 4 weeks. He's had at least 8 targets or a touchdown in all of the past 4 weeks. In that time, he's had 3 touchdowns, a total of 26 targets, and 99 yards, 106 yards in 3 of the past 4 weeks. That's crazy. I mean, his numbers are through the roof, as of late. So are we running it back with Devonta Smith? Are we running it back with A.J. Brown? How you feeling?
I think that, I'm kind of always partial to a little A.J. Brown action. I mean, he's just got he's going to get the lion's share of the air yards in this offense. I think that, seeing I think he's always leading in the first read target share. And if we do see the Eagles fall behind, which I think they're projected to for good reason, I just think that Jalen Hurts, when he locks onto one guy, it's A.J. Brown, and he could end up having, 10, 12, 15 targets. I kind of like paying up for him and then seeing what else we can build around this.
Yeah, with Brock Purdy's price discount, it makes it feasible without killing us. Kind of opposite of what happened in the last one, where we had to pay down for 2 Washington players, and we still ended up having to pivot down to Greg Dortch in the end. This one still has a little bit of wiggle room at $4,650 left for each player. Let's go ahead. Let's get a DST in there as a placeholder. We'll throw the Lions in again just because. And this lineup right here, because of Brock Purdy's low ownership, feels like it could be the opportunity to plug Zack Moss in. Do we want to try that, or do we want to wait a little bit longer and see if we can get Zack Moss in a later lineup?
I like doing it here because I have an idea for our third lineup that isn't exactly going to mesh well with playing Zack Moss. So let's jam him, eat the chalk on this lineup, and then that should help us get some breathing room everywhere else.
Now, if we weren't to play Zack Moss, right? And I meant to talk about this in the last one. There's a way to kind of leverage off of him where we play a lot of Derrick Henry, play a lot of DeAndre Hopkins in hopes that it's a one-sided affair, and Zack Moss is kind of taken out of the game. I know that he still is a receiving threat to an extent, but Tennessee is great about stopping pass-catching running backs thus far in the season. So I think that DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry kind of eliminate that. But you can still play DeAndre Hopkins in this lineup, and you can play a little bit of Derrick Henry. I think that Tajay Spears is really interesting as a skinny run back. But would you be open to playing DeAndre Hopkins up against this Indianapolis defense that struggles against outside wide receivers?
I like that. Yeah, and Hopkins, his target shares have been declining a little bit the last couple of weeks. Like, kind of just one of those things you notice when you do projections. He's not been feasting quite as intensely as he did. Look at those first couple starts from Levis, I think starting with Atlanta in week 6, 6 targets, 11 targets, 8 targets, kind of settled down, right? I mean, looking at 5 targets each of the last 2 weeks. But he's still an alpha, and I think that if anyone on that Titans receiving side of the ball is going to have a kind of a noteworthy day for DFS, it's DeAndre Hopkins.
All right, let's go ahead and get Hopkins in the lineup. I think it just makes too much sense in terms of game script and upside potential, especially for Zack Moss. And I don't think that DeAndre Hopkins is going to see significant ownership. I think he's almost forgotten about. So that's a way to kind of differentiate your lineups from the rest of the field. Now, where do we go from here? Because we have Brock Purdy, Zack Moss. We've got a hole at the other running back spot, Brandon Ayuk, A.J. Brown as a run back. DeAndre Hopkins is run back to Zack Moss in the Lions defense, which we'll probably switch out of. Possibly. We need a tight end, a flex position, and a running back. Where do you want to go from here? Do you want to try and build on tight end and then flex and see what's left at running back?
I think I don't want to let this show go by without talking about the spot that the Steelers running backs are in.
Yes!
I mean, Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris could both absolutely eat on Sunday. We know that Jaylen Warren's probably going to see more targets, has a better chance of breaking off a big run. Najee Harris probably slightly more likely for a touchdown. This game could very well give way to either of them having a big DFS day. So I want to squeeze one of those guys into the running back slots. I think they're relatively affordable too. I mean, we're looking at $5,400 for Warren and $5,200 for Harris. So that's right within our price point. And I think, if you look below those guys, aside from Zack Moss, I don't know where else you're getting as much opportunity and upside for your dollar in DFS this week.
Jaylen Warren is one of my favorite plays on the slate, and I wanted to line him up with my locks. I was like, you know what? It could be Najee Harris to an extent. I don't love Najee Harris, but it could be him on a touchdown. So he's not a lock for me, but I do want to play him in some lineups this week. So that dude this week is Jaylen Warren. He fits perfectly into this slate, into this lineup that we have. We're left at tight end and flex. $4,400 a piece is what we have to spend. So we're looking at likely paying down at tight end again, and then potentially paying up at flex.
Yeah,
where do we go?
Last lineup we stayed off the New England tight ends because we already had some Ramondre in there.
Ooh,
I think if we want to look for a tight end that's the stone cold minimum, Mike Gesicki at $2,500 is probably going to see a lot more snaps this week than he has recently because of the injuries to the wide receivers. If we want to take the slightly better and more targeted so far this season of the two tight ends, we could get Hunter Henry at $3,100, but they're both, I think, pretty affordable and good options for us in this lineup.
Yeah, I actually really love that take. It's very strong. I think that the likelihood that Hunter Henry scores a touchdown over Gesicki is kind of what does it for me there. I'm going to lean more towards Hunter Henry. Do you have an issue with that?
No, I like it. I think, if we see that we need those $600 on another, this last flex, if there's someone else that really stands out to us, we can just flip back. But I like Henry over Gesicki in a vacuum as well.
Oh, man. So we're thinking that Miami is going to be a bust game because we don't have anybody from Miami in our lineup. And I don't think we're capable from getting anybody, in our lineup from Miami at this point either, outside of maybe Achane. Where does he sit?
He might be.
He's $6,900. He's way up there.
Yeah, no.
Wow, he's expensive. Yeah, so we're thinking that Miami's gonna be a bust. I don't know if I love that, but it's not like we're left with a lot of options.
I think this may be like a crazy pivot here. Brian Robinson is only $6,100 if you lean into that game being a bust, and maybe the Commanders get a couple early turnovers. They're playing from ahead. B-Rob gets a couple scores. We can still save some money at defense in this lineup. If we really want to lean into fading that game or just saying that it's going to go away that people aren't expecting. I also think, Sam Laporta at $5,600. We talked about sprinkling some Lions. Saints aren't exactly good against tight ends this year. Kind of like him in that range as well. What do you think?
I do want to bring up Javonte Williams, who hasn't really been good the past 2 weeks, but he's still getting involved in the receiving game. He saw 6 targets last week. Still didn't do much with them. But, I mean, he gave you, back 3 weeks ago, he gave you 2 consecutive weeks of fantasy viable points because of his prowess in the receiving game, getting a receiving touchdown. The Texans, Derek Stingley's back for the past 2 weeks, although he doesn't look great. He's still, getting acclimated. I kind of want to have a little bit of play in there, and I just think the volume's going to be there for Javonte Williams over Sam Laporta. I do not want to put too much interest into this New Orleans-Detroit game. I know that Sam Laporta could come away with a touchdown, but what does he see? 4 targets if they're winning by 2 touchdowns in the first quarter?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a good point. I think Javonte Williams, this is a very friendly price for him, and that Denver-Houston game is, I think, the second highest total on the slate aside from Miami-Washington. And yeah, I like this play a lot too. So I could be happy with that. I mean, he's exactly what we need to. He's 5,700. I think that suits this lineup perfectly.
Let's do it, man. This could be the 1-and-1. I wish that we could figure out a way.
Do you want to shave off a couple dollars just to pivot off to a different defense in case? I mean, we've already. I mean, I don't know.
We're betting against this game. Go ahead. I mean, we're betting against this game. Were you going to say something else?
No, I mean, I guess, yeah, I was just thinking if you wanted to get unique across the lineups we were building here, because we did use the Lions already, but I think they're in a good spot. And I mean, the other defenses around them in that price range, nothing really jumps out to me either. So we can keep riding the Lions.
The only other one that I would pivot to is San Francisco's defense, but we don't want to do that because we're betting on this game. Like, if we were going to do a San Francisco defensive lineup, we probably would have done it in the last one.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
All right, let's enter in this lineup. We are in there, and we got one more to build, baby. We got one more to build. You keeping up? You good to go?
Oh yeah, I'm. I don't know if you saw this in our little show notes. I kind of got a little creative with a lineup here for us. If you want to indulge my my spicy take of the week.
Yeah, let's talk about some of these sleepers. Let's talk about some spicy takes. This is what everybody's been waiting for, Dario. This is where everybody stays to hear the tail end of the show. I got so much hate mail because I skipped last week on my Twitter inbox because they're like, wait, where's the show? Wait, where are the sleepers? Hey, can you just text us some sleepers? I'm not even kidding. People were asking me to text some sleepers, and I'm like, I didn't do any research, bro. I'm sitting here with my family. What? Like I'm full off turkey. I'm chilling. I can't be doing
turkey
this.
Naps.
I'm getting the turkey naps in, man. I do all my DFS for that Thursday, Thanksgiving day. I don't even do DFS lineups on that following Sunday because I go so hard in the motherfucking paint on Thanksgiving, man.
That's the only way to do it.
This is why everybody comes here. I think that there are some great plays. Let's go ahead and start us out with some sleepers. You can kick it off.
I mentioned his name already, but I really love Josh Downs this week. He's reasserted himself as the number 2 target in the Colts offense. I mean, we know he had that injury. He's kind of bounced up and down, but he's fully back. I mean, we expect him to see anywhere from a 20 to 25% target share in this game. The things I said earlier about the Colts offense staying high paced, Gardner Minshew keeping them afloat. I think Shane Steichen is a really good coach. He's doing a great job with the Colts this year. And I mean, we've seen Josh Downs have a couple of big games already. I think that he's someone that I am definitely going out of my way to fit into some lineups this week.
I love that take. I think that we see a lot of check down opportunities from Minshew, and Downs is thriving in that role that he has. Reminds me a lot of like Jamison Crowder, where you have a guy that's not hyper athletic or anything like that, but like he's coming in the league as a rookie. Nobody really knows what to expect. He ends up in a perfect situation, and boom, he just takes off. He's perfect for DFS lineups at 5,100. Man, he's a great play. I absolutely love that. Let's see. You brought up Kate Otten, who you put in the show sheet. You brought up the tight ends, so we pretty much covered those guys. I brought up Juwan Johnson. I think that Taysom Hill is interesting this week as well, by the way, if you're paying up a tight end. which is seeming like a lot of lineups aren't able to get there at the tight end position. But Jameson Williams, who has come on strong, he's coming on real strong. He's I don't think he saw a single week of over 50% snap share to start the year out. And the past 2 weeks, he's seen a 50% snap share in both those. It looks like he found his hands, or at least found his gloves, the gloves that actually work. That or he's using Stickum. Plus, he's getting involved in the rushing game. I mean, he had a rushing touchdown called back, I believe it was a couple weeks ago. I mean, this dude he's finally merging to what we all thought he could be. Although he's not there yet, I predict that after we see the Lions force the New Orleans Saints to have their 8th 3-and-out, because that's pretty much what we're going to be looking at this entire time. I think that Jameson Williams is going to have
really specific.
I'm just saying, like, it just feels like it's going to be a game where Jameson Williams just runs the hell out of them, and they just can't keep up. And he's going to see a lot of underneath opportunities. More importantly, he's going to see some big play opportunities. I think he gets a touchdown this week up against the Saints. He'll be good up against wide receivers. I think that this could be it. And I don't think he's going to see a ton of volume, but at his price, I think that he's worth it. He's a very, very fun dart throw.
I mean, yeah, that's like in Jameson Williams' DNA is having his whole week made up on one play, right? I mean, that's like the thesis and the essence of who that guy is. And yeah, and anytime he's this cheap and the Lions are favored, I mean, I like it. All it takes is one shot play.
Dude, I'm looking at his numbers. This is really funny. Have you seen his receiving numbers? Oh my God, he's had 2 receptions in every single game he's played so far, outside of one. Where this is funny though, because in all these games where he had 2 receptions outside the one, he has had 2 or 3 targets, 3 targets for all of them except for one. So he's had 3 targets in all of those 2 reception games. The one that he didn't, he saw 6 targets and had 0 receptions. Like, that is absolutely hilarious. Like, don't give him too many targets. He might not catch a single one. If you throw him 3 balls, he'll catch 2 of them, and it's going to be for 50 yards. All right, that's all you got to do. He might give you a touchdown too. So that's pretty much what we're hoping from. Dude, imagine if Jameson Williams just pulled it all together and was actually like, he had his mind right, saw those 6 targets, caught 5 of them, he'd have 150 yards. That's what could happen this week.
I like it. It's a nice little spicy take for us.
Yeah, give him 6 receptions this week. He'll catch 4 or 5 of them for 150 yards. Let's go. Let's go.
Maybe we get lucky and it's 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. Yeah, 2 touchdowns would be great. All right. Let's do this. Let's build another lineup. Thank you very much for that assist, Dario. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, he's been a major help in getting this layout taken care of. Normally it's just me by myself. So we have obviously the Jameson Williams talk that we just had. You can see it over there on YouTube. Go check us out over there on our YouTube channel. Let's go ahead and let's start this build off. Do you have a start to this build? Do you have a guy that you really like?
So kind of piggybacking off of liking Josh Downs this week.
Oh God, don't tell me you're going to play Gardner Minshew. Don't tell me that.
I think you can double stack Gardner Minshew. I'm going for it.
Gross. Really?
The Titans, man, the same reasons we talked about fading Zack Moss, the Titans run defense is a lot stronger than their pass defense. I mean, all you need is, Michael Pittman's been absolutely going crazy the last few weeks. Josh Downs, I think, is an underrated talent. This is just such a great budget stack. I mean, we could, if we want to build, say, like a McCaffrey lineup, I think this is the stack that you put in there to make that all fit together.
Yeah. All right. I'm on board. You know what's really funny is I'm sitting here looking, and I just started laughing to myself. Easton Stick, who hasn't played a snap, is more expensive than Mac Jones.
Oh, and Bryce Young.
Bryce Young, he's the same price as Bryce Young, but he is above him over here on the list. I think that's freaking hilarious, dude. That is so funny.
That is wild.
Stick. Has he ever played an NFL snap in his entire career? I don't know if he has. But he's 4,900. That's hilarious. All right. God, that's funny. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start out with who are we saying? Gardner Minshew, and we're going to do Josh Downs and who else?
I think
double stack, right?
I think we can go for the double stack. Get Pittman in there too. I mean, Pittman's been just an absolute monster the last few weeks. 13 targets, 12 targets, 8 catches on 8 targets, 13 targets. I think that, like, man, this, if you want to fade Zack Moss, I think that this could be a game where we just see the Colts lean into airing it out against the Titans, and Pittman and Downs, they're both just like good wide receivers. I think that's something that you always want to keep in mind and makes them even more exciting to play. They're just good at the game.
Does that mean that Derrick Henry is going to keep up his hot streak and we're going to see vintage Derrick Henry this week? Last week he had 18 carries, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, I feel like if Tennessee's going to go up and it's going to force the Colts to pass, Zack Moss is going to get scripted out. Derrick Henry has to have a big game. Am I wrong?
I like it. Yeah, he's a nice run back. And have you seen whether Tajay Spears is expected to play? Because I know he left the game early last week and got rocked on that hospital ball from Levis.
Yeah, hospital ball. Right now we're talking. It doesn't say anything about it being out.
I'm surprised he didn't enter the concussion protocol after that hit.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything on it. I don't hate Tajay Spears, by the way, as another play. If you think this game is going to be a shootout and you think it's going to be 60-pointer, but I don't see that happening. All right, let's go ahead and let's figure out how we're going to fill this lineup out. I mean, Michael Pittman, Derrick Henry made our lineup a little bit tougher. I'm going to go ahead and throw in a placeholder defense again this time. Let's play the 49ers just to get it in there. And then you brought up Christian McCaffrey. I mean, going with the 49ers defense and Christian McCaffrey would be completely contrarian and kind of fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think we might it'll be interesting to see what we can afford after we get Henry and McCaffrey in there, but I'm sure that's going to be a very unique combination.
It really will be. We're going to end up crushing half these. We're going to be like in the 1%ers in terms of our actual lineups. But I mean, lately for the Eagles, I believe they've been struggling to an extent up against running backs. Yeah, I mean, up against the Bills, they gave up 92 yards. They gave up 9 receptions to the Bills running backs. To the Chiefs, they gave up 116 yards. I mean, the Eagles linebackers are playing a lot more off ball as of late to compensate for their coverage woes. And so we could see that happen this week, which kind of lets us leverage off of that game while still playing that game.
Yeah, let's see if we can fit it in. Let's put in our boy CMC.
Good one. Oh, that wasn't intentional. Okay, yeah. I mean, we're sitting here with Gardner Minshew, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Joshua Downs, Michael Pittman. We need another wide receiver, tight end, and a flex spot. Man, I wonder what lineups would look like with a good tight end this week. I just want to know what will the lineup look like with a good tight end, because we have not had the chance to do that yet. God, I feel like we should have somebody from the Dolphins game, but we're not going to be able to fit anybody in from the Dolphins.
Durham Smythe?
Raheem Mostert, Achane. Honestly, if you're not playing that game, it's going to be tough to get anybody in there unless you just don't want to fade, or you want to fade the San Francisco Philly game, excuse me. Oh, so tight end, I guess we should go back down and pay down. I do like Njoku this week at 4K. He wouldn't kill us. It would still add some salary to the other 2 spots we need. How do you feel about Njoku?
I don't know. I think, as you probably heard today, Joe Flacco is going to start for the Cleveland Browns, which might bode well for Njoku, like just a lot of underneath garbage targets. But
dude's seen targets, 8 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets, 15 targets, 9 targets. Oh, actually, it started in week 7. 9 targets, 8 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets, 15 targets. So that's what I said before. Maybe. Oh, and then 9 targets again.
I'm kind of inclined to fade that game altogether, but I can see the reasons why he might be a decent play.
Yeah, we got Harry Snowman in the chat, by the way. What's up, Harry? I really would love to play Njoku as a dart throw type opportunity there. I know Mari Cooper is going to be healthy this week, but we need some upside. We need to get different with tight end. We can't just keep on paying down for tight ends and hoping for a big hit.
All right, yeah, let's do it.
There's some high scoring games this week, you know.
Yeah, that won't be one of them. I can promise you that.
Yeah, but there could be a concentration of targets as to where he could be involved. And I expected the Rams to be big in this one. All right, we have left in the pot 4,800. We have wide receiver and flex position left. Unfortunately, I wanted to get some Tank Dell in my lineups this week. That's not going to happen. I wanted some Raheem Mostert and some Achane lineups in my my builds this week. That's not going to happen. Rashad White is interesting, although I think he's too chalky. Just to give you a heads up. And then George Kittle I brought up. I would love to have him in some of my lineups, but that's not going to happen either. So let's go all the way down to the 5K range.
How do you feel about?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't love it. I really don't. I think it's funny, but James Conner, I get that he was coming back from injury, but he didn't do too much last week. The Steelers have been good. I like Rondale more, to be honest with you. I think Rondale more actually has a great chance of going off this week. He's a little more expensive, isn't he?
Yeah.
Where's Rondale Moore sitting?
Don't know Rondale's price off the top of my head, but I mean, if you're gonna,
he is sitting. He's only at 3,400. Woo! I did.
Yeah, I think he's been. I think he's been kind of somewhat replaced by Dortch the last couple of weeks. Is part of what's been happening. Let me.
He had the touchdown, the one reception, 48 yards, and a touchdown previously. He hasn't done much for fantasy purposes, but at 3,400, man, I mean that's strong. That's real strong.
Yeah, I mean it would be actually. Yeah, no, I think I might have been mistaken. His route participation's still been solid. Hovering between 65 and 75% the last few weeks. Even though Dortch has come on a little bit stronger recently. I think Rondale could be worth a sprinkle.
Dude, I mean, Rondale Moore's fun. Plus, it allows us to play like a Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Deebo Samuel would be fun for this because we could see a lot of misdirection to try and get Philly off beat. We could see Deebo have 4 to 5 carries this week. Christian McCaffrey still carries the ball enough. So we're seeing a lot of time wasted off the clock just due to the rushing possibilities and the short area completions. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy might end up putting up a decent week, but you can't fit Christian McCaffrey and Derrick Henry and Deebo Samuel in the same lineup. So we're contrarian enough.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could afford Devontae Smith just to have like a guy on each side of that game. But I do think Deebo is a really good value this week. And I mean, there aren't going to be many lineups with Deebo and McCaffrey that are also missing Purdy. So I think that this could be a really interesting, we have the Niners defense. We're kind of playing the scenario that they come out ahead, and Deebo Samuel could still get carries, get creative touches near a line of scrimmage, regardless of the game script. So
that's kind of what I'm thinking too.
I mean, we've got an Ayuk lineup already in locked and loaded, so let's build a Deebo one too.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate Ramondre Stevenson in this place. So if you want to switch out, put Ramondre Stevenson in. Cool with that. Devin Singletary might see some touches alleviated, but could still get a couple touchdowns in there. So I like Devin Singletary. And then you brought up, James Conner. So all those are in play for all y'all for this skeleton build. But for us, we're going to go Deebo Samuel. And we're looking at Gardner Minshew, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Downs, Pittman, Rondale Moore, David Njoku, Deebo Samuel, and the 49ers defense. This is about as contrarian as you can possibly get.
I like it.
All right, let's do it. Enter it in, baby. Man, I'm only left with $943 left. That sucks. All right, let's see if we can replace $50 of that. To make up for those 3 lineups I built. But I appreciate you for joining me, Dario. You were a lifesaver in terms of coming onto the show, fresh out of your van, joining us as you're traveling across the country. You want to let everybody know a little bit about that?
Yeah, no. So for those of you who aren't aware, I mean, I'm currently on a great NFL road trip. Currently, I've been to, I think, 21 stadiums this season. This weekend, it'll be Sunday in Tampa and Monday night in Jacksonville. So just cruising along, trying to make some history and be at all 30 NFL stadiums in one season. So if you guys are not following me already on Twitter, at Dario Offstein, keeping everything fresh over there. So tune in.
Love it, man. Absolutely love it. I'm excited for you to do that, to visit all 30 stadiums. Has it ever been done before? Do you know?
I haven't. I tried to do some digging, and I couldn't find anyone else who had done it. So, I mean, it's possible. I don't know.
And he's buying a pin in every one as well.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm excited, man.
Keep the collection going.
Love that. Love that. Hey, make sure y'all go tune in to the podcast. Of course, this episode is coming out. If you guys missed the tail end of it, I see that we have actually an influx of listeners over the past 5 or so minutes. If you guys want to go back and watch it on YouTube, you can, but this will be available on a podcast tomorrow morning. So go check that out. Thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate everybody for joining us this season. Continue to do so. We're going to be going at least through the end of the season, if not the playoffs. I did the playoffs last year. Hopefully we'll be able to do it again this year. Make sure y'all hit us up over there at Dario Offstein on Twitter and at FF_intervention on Twitter as well. We're out of here.
Hey, I want to take a moment to thank you for tuning in. It's important to me that all of our media be free. This is only possible because of you allowing a true independent sports media enterprise to thrive unlike any other in the business. So please subscribe to the All In Package to continue to make all of this possible, to ensure that all of our stats, information, data, content is available to you, especially you, the people that get the site and get the show.